Hello and welcome to another video on reading comprehension. This is the second video and this caters to the main types of questions that are tested in the competitive and standardized tests such as GMAT, GRE, SAT, CAT and so on. So in this video we are going to discuss the main types of questions. We have already done one video in which we discussed the basic strategy that we have to use in all reading comprehension questions, specifically the strategy relating to how to map a passage. And we also learned about the differences between the GMAT and the GRE in terms of reading comprehension. Alright, so before we get started on this video, please don't forget to visit us at perfect-scores.com. You can send in your valuable feedback, or if you have any kind of queries, you can always mail us at perfectscores89@gmail.com. Apart from that, please share us and like us at facebook.com/perfectscores. So let's get started with this video on the main types of questions. Now here are the main types of questions that are usually tested. These are the basically three categories of questions. The first one is main purpose. Now main purpose means the main purpose of the author while writing that reading passage, or what does the author actually want to tell us. That is the main purpose, the overall purpose of the passage, and that is why we say that the main purpose questions test our overall and global understanding of the passage. Alright, so that's why sometimes you may have a look at these questions as global questions. There are some websites or some sources that call them overall questions. Let's just call it the simple main purpose questions, where you have to deal with the main purpose. There is nothing else that is asked apart from the main purpose. The second type of questions are based on inference. Now, if you have watched the videos on critical reasoning, you must be knowing what is an inference. There are two important things about an inference. First of all, it is not stated directly. Right? So that is the first thing. In these questions, you will not have an answer that will be there in the passage written directly, because inferences are what we as readers derive, not something that the author writes in the passage. The second most important thing in inferences is that these have to be 100% true. They are not just some random guesses. They have to be 100% true. So as a result, they never contradict the author's purpose. So you need an option in those questions that does not contradict the author's purpose, and that is 100% true. The third most common type of question is logic questions. Logic questions usually ask you, why has the author done what he has done? Why is he using these words? Why is he using this paragraph? Why is he quoting this information? What is the function of this paragraph? So looking at all the critical details of the passage, why it is written in the way it is written. So these are the common three question types. If you are well versed with each one of them, you will get a very high score in reading comprehension, no matter what paragraph comes ahead in front of you. So here are the common traps that are usually there in front of students. In case of the main purpose questions, where we are talking about the whole passage as a whole, the usual common trap is an option that contains details that are there in the passage but are not the primary focus. So in other words, a very narrow option that does not talk about the entire passage, talks only about one little detail. So that is a narrow option, a trap answer, because on looking, the option is correct. However, it's not the answer to that question. The second common trap is there in inference questions. In inference questions, if you remember, you need to be 100% true, and something that is not stated, it's actually implied by the author. So if you get an option that uses recycle language, that would be a trap answer. Recycle language means picking a word from here, here, here and here, from here and there, and you put them into one single option. So what happens is that every word of the option is correct. However, the option itself is not correct when it comes to meaning. So that's a common trap answer. Coming to the third one, that is logic questions. The common trap in logic questions is an option or options that go into details but not the reasons or the rationality behind it. Remember, we are looking at reasons or rationality because these are logic questions. Any option that gives you details but not the reasons, not the rationality, is a trap answer. Right, so here's a summary of the common trap answers that are there. So what I usually refer to all the traps are with the help of this acronym POWCEW. So these are the common trap answers. Answers that are partially correct means there will be a little like one word that makes that option wrong. One word is wrong means that entire option is wrong. Then you have options that are out of scope, or we call them irrelevant options that deal with information outside the passage. They are wrong answers. Then obviously a wrong answer that contradicts the passage, that contradicts the main purpose. Alright, so let me put it down here. Contradicts the main purpose of the passage. That would be a trap answer. Comparison. Sometimes two things are mentioned in a paragraph, but the comparison is not made. So you may have options like A is better than B or A is superior to B. However, no such comparison is made. The two things may be there, but the comparison is not there in the passage. As a result, these options are all trap answers. Then E stands for extreme answers. Extreme answers that contain words like inevitable or words like only, never, everyone, always. So these are very, very strong words. Usually options with these words are wrong. And the last one, wrong location. So it's just like that example that I was giving, that I ask you for the whole paragraph's purpose. I ask you for the main purpose of the entire passage, and the option gives you the main purpose of the second paragraph. Now that would be a wrong answer because it's very narrow. Alright, so let me put it narrow, and it may be correct according to the passage, but it's not answering that question. Alright, so it may be an answer to a separate question, but does not answer the question that is being asked right now. So that would be the wrong location and the wrong answer. So remember, whenever you eliminate a few questions, a few options from your question, and when you have the scratch paper in front of you, you should be able to mention why certain options go. So at least P, O, W, C, anything you may be able to mention. Even if you don't mention, it's fine, but you should have one of these reasons to eliminate your answer. So we'll go ahead and even solve a few questions today in this video, and we'll see how we are able to eliminate the options. And here's a review of what we have done so far in reading comprehension. The first important point, do not read the question before reading the passage. Now for GMAT test takers, you will not be able to read all questions because you are not allowed to skip questions. For GRE and CAT, you can skip questions. However, that's not recommended because eventually you will end up wasting time. So it's better if you do not read the question and just go ahead to the passage and then come to the question. The second point, map the passage side by side. There's no extra time that is needed to map the passage. You can do that side by side. The third thing, keep in mind the main purpose, issue, tone, and organization. So I call this MITO. Remember, every passage that you do, you need to have this in your mind. What's the main purpose of the passage? What is the issue? Issue actually means the topic, and main purpose is what is the author saying on that topic. Tone, is it positive, is it neutral, or is it negative? And the organization, what does the author do? For example, he talks about a problem, about the causes of that problem, the effects, and then he gives some solutions for that problem. Alright, so that would be a brief idea about the organization. So remember these four things, the MITO must be there in your mind because most probably you are going to get questions on four of these things. The next thing, now this is very important for GMAT. In GMAT, More than 90% of your RC questions are based on these four things. Main purpose questions, detailed questions that talk about a particular line number, inference questions, and logic questions. The remaining 10% or less than 10% questions are actually based on critical reasoning. How do you strengthen the author's argument? How do you weaken the author's argument? Those kinds of questions. And even in critical reasoning, if you remember, the main question types were assumption based, strengthening based, and weakening based. Alright, so that covers your entire RC. You should be able to crack it very easily if you know this information and use it as a tool. The next thing on reading the question, what you have to do is do the research in your passage map, in the passage, and predict your answer, a very important step. Don't forget this step. And after that, you evaluate your answer choices, use the process of elimination, and eliminate all trap answers. And this is where you are going to use the POWCEW technique. That is, every elimination must have a reason, and the reason will be one of these 6 reasons that we've already discussed. And some more basic strategies: don't expect to be familiar with the content of the passages. As we've discussed in the previous video, the passages could range from anything. It could be social passage, it could be based on science, physics, history, economics, philosophy, literature, arts, business, economics, anything. But you are not expected to be familiar with any of the contents. You need to analyze each passage carefully because the questions will require you to have specific and detailed understanding of the material. You need to focus on keywords and phrases. Now, these keywords or phrases are the ones that we actually put in our passage map, and make every effort to avoid losing the sense of what is being discussed. And to avoid losing the sense, we recommend you use this technique: main purpose, the issue of the passage, the topic, and the organization. You will not lose the main purpose. Plus, the map will always be there in front of you so that you are focused and don't get distracted. The next important thing, remember, comprehension, not speed, is the critical success factor when it comes to reading comprehension questions. Now, this is a strategy that is actually given by the official guide, so you must pay heed to this strategy. Alright, so there are some students who read everything very, very quickly in haste. However, speed is not so important. You should be able to understand what is written in the passage. That is more important. So here is a passage that we are going to do today. The best thing for you to do right now would be pause this video right now, read the passage, take about 3 to 4 minutes, and make your own passage map. And I'm going to go ahead with my passage map. So if you remember, I told you how to read the passage. We don't read like this, that coral reefs are one of the most fragile, biologically complex, and diverse marine ecosystems on Earth. What we read is coral reefs, most fragile, biologically complex, and diverse marine ecosystems on Earth. So in our passage map, now remember, we need only this much space. So we are going to write coral reefs. They are fragile, they are complex, and they are diverse. This ecosystem, one of the most fascinating paradoxes: how do clear and thus nutrient poor waters support such prolific and productive communities? So two opposite things are happening. There's water that is poor in nutrients, that is very clear actually, but how is it able to support such productive communities? Alright, so that is the paradox being discussed here. Nutrient poor water can support productive communities. Now, part of the answer lies within the tissues. So one explanation is given by tissues, symbiotic cells. They carry out photosynthesis using wastes of the corals. Alright, so tissues have cells and they use the waste given by corals, and that is how they produce food for themselves. So I'm talking about these cells that use the waste of corals and make food for themselves and for other members of the reef community. This symbiotic process, so you see symbiosis is an important word, so it's good if we write this down here. Symbiosis between tissues and cells and the coral reef. It allows organisms in the reef community to use sparse nutrient resources efficiently. Unfortunately, however, so the negative thing that is happening is that human activities, so let me put it down here, human activities are causing degradation. So let me put it like that, of shallow marine habitats, adding nutrients. What are they doing is they are adding the nutrients. So that means too much of nutrients are there. And agriculture, slash and burn, land clearing, sewage disposal, manufacturing creates waste byproducts, increase nutrient load. So basically nutrients are being added. The symptoms are destabilized herbivore population and increasing abundance of algae and filter feeding animals. So algae increases because it gets more nutrients due to these human activities. Now declines in reef communities are consistent. This also causes a decline in reef. So let's say the amount of reef reduces. Nutrient output is increasing in direct proportion to growing human population, threatening reef communities sensitive to subtle changes in nutrient input to waters. So let's just revise what it is saying. The main issue of the topic now is about coral reef, and the main purpose is that humans are causing degradation by bringing an imbalance in the amount of nutrients that is perfect for the coral reefs to thrive. So the main purpose is the relation that humans have, the effect that humans have on coral reef. Now, tone of the passage, let me put it down here, the tone in the organization. Tone would be a little negative, more like warning. The author is trying to warn us that this is happening, trying to caution us. And the organization is that the author talks about coral reefs, how nutrients affect coral reefs, and how humans are affecting nutrients, in turn affecting coral reefs. And let's revise this once. Coral reefs are fragile, complex, diverse, and they live in water that does not have much nutrients. They need that kind of water. And the reason they are able to thrive is because of the symbiosis, that there are cells that are able to use the waste products of corals and then produce food for themselves. Now these tissues are of the algae or the plankton that are there. You have the zooxanthellae. So no need to get into details of that. The next thing that the author mentions is that human activities are actually degrading the coral reefs because they add nutrients, they destabilize, and the algae amount increases, the reef amount decreases. So that's how the author is trying to warn us. Now let's go to the questions and answer them one by one. The first is a main purpose question the passage is primarily concerned with. Now if you remember, we have to do our scratch work. Let's suppose this is question 1. This is about primary purpose. Primary purpose is how humans are actually degrading the coral reef, and this is a very bad thing to happen. So let's go to the options one by one. A option says, describing the effects of human activities on algae in coral reefs. Now this part of the answer is correct. However, algae in coral reefs, we are not describing effects of human activities on algae in coral reefs. So algae is the wrong word. It's a partially correct answer. So that's the reason we give. B says, explaining how human activities are posing a threat to coral reef communities. Now, if you see, this is matching our own answer, so let's keep it. We will not eliminate it. C, discussing the process by which coral reefs deteriorate in nutrient-poor waters. Now, that is just a specific part. That's not the whole answer. So, it's a very narrow answer. Let's also call this partially correct, or let's call it the wrong answer. It's out of scope. So you can give whatever reason, but that's a very narrow answer. Alright, so let's put it that way. It's a very narrow option. This is given, but only in some part. So C is also gone. D says, explaining how coral reefs produce food. Now, if you remember, it's not coral reefs who produce food. This is a totally wrong answer. It's the algae that produce food. That is how nutrients affect the food production of algae. So D is totally wrong. E says describing abundance of algae and filter feeding animals in coral reef areas. Again, it's a very narrow option, not matching our own prediction. It's not the main purpose, so E is also gone. Your answer is B. Coming to the next question. This is going to be based on inference. The passage suggests which of the following about coral reef communities. So let's put in our options over here. Alright, so it's an inference question. We can't predict our answer. We'll have to go through each option. A says, coral reef communities may actually be more likely to thrive in waters that are relatively low in nutrients. Now, don't you think this is what the passage is actually saying? That if the water is low in nutrients, it thrives more. As soon as the nutrients increase beyond a point, the deterioration, the degradation starts. So this may be the answer. Let's keep it. B says, the nutrients in which coral reef communities thrive are only found in shallow waters. Now this word only is an extreme word. B is eliminated. C says, human population growth has led to changing ocean temperatures which threatens coral reef communities. Now, temperature is not mentioned anywhere and that is not threatening the reef communities, so that's a wrong answer, out of scope, irrelevant. D says, the growth of coral reef communities tends to destabilize underwater herbivore populations. Now, growth of coral reef does not hamper anything as per what the passage is saying. So D is wrong. E says, coral reef communities are more complex and diverse than most ecosystems located on dry land. Now, nothing is mentioned about dry land. This is again irrelevant information. This is gone. That means our answer is A. Coming to the last question. Now, this is going to be a detailed question. The author refers to filter feeding animals in order to a detail along with inference. So let me add the word detail here. Now in the actual exam, you will be given a rhyme reference, but however over here I'm just highlighting that part. Why is the author referring to filter feeding animals? If you see, filter feeding is mentioned here. So let's predict our answer and write down our options. Now when you get a reference like this, it's better to read a little above, a little below. So let's start reading from here till here. So it says agriculture, land clearing, disposal, manufacturing, waste byproducts, increased nutrient loads. Typical symptoms of reef decline are destabilized herbivore populations, increasing abundance of algae and filter feeding animals. So what this filter feeding animals is doing is, it's telling us that it's a symptom of declining reef. Declines in reef communities are consistent with observations that nutrient input increasing direct proportion to human population. Symptom of declining reef populations, and also some relation with human activities and the effect of human activities on declining reef population. So let's go ahead and go to the options. A says, provide an example of a characteristic sign of reef deterioration. Now A is doing that. A is giving us a symptom. So let's keep A and see how the words are being used. There's a shift in language that you will be able to observe. The passage uses the word symptom. The option uses the word characteristic sign. It actually means one and the same thing, but it's just given to deviate you away from the possible correct answer. B says, explain how reef communities acquire sustenance for survival. Now that is not mentioned. C identifies a factor that helps herbivore populations thrive. That is not the reason why this is mentioned. Indicate a cause of decreasing nutrient input in waters that reef inhabit. And nowhere a cause has been mentioned that is responsible for the decreasing nutrient input. Only for increasing it is mentioned, not for decreasing. D also goes. E says, identify members of coral reef communities that rely on coral reefs for nutrients. That is totally not the answer. It's not identifying members of the coral reef communities. So here your answer is the undisputed A option. So I hope that the information was quite clear. Alright, so that's all in this video. You have learned quite a lot. I've explained you almost every technique that you need to crack the RC. All you need to do now is practice. Now, the best sources for practice for the GMAT test takers, there are two indisputable sources, that is the official guide and the verbal review. And after that, if you want to do practice in forms of tests, you can go to the GMAT prep software and practice some questions on that. Apart from that, for students who are taking GRE, for them the best source would be the official guide of the GRE and the practice tests that are there, and you can also take the power prep. For the other test takers, the best way would be to again practice all these resources that are available on the internet. You can practice questions from the GMAT official guide and the GRE official guide as well. And there is no dearth of material that is available online. And if you want some special reading comprehension passages, you can always email us at this address and get some more helpful material. But remember, the important things are the common wrong answer types and the strategy that you need to have in mind, that is basically mapping, predicting, and the process of elimination. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. I'll go ahead and see you again in the next video. Thank you so much.